My name is Abigail Matthews, 27 years old, standing in my marble foyer watching my twins toddle across imported Italian tile. 2 years ago, I was sobbing on a park bench, pregnant and disowned, after my parents chose gossip over their own daughter. They never knew the baby belonged to Alexander Sterling, the 30 under 30 billionaire. Now, as I peek through the security camera at my parents and sister on my doorstep, their clothes worn and faces desperate, I wonder if karma has finally come calling. Before I continue my story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to see how I handled the family who abandoned me at my lowest point. I grew up in a comfortable middle-class home in Connecticut, where appearances meant everything to my parents, Walter and Catherine Matthews. Dad ran a moderately successful construction company. Mom was a real estate agent, and together they created a picture-perfect suburban life. At least on the surface. Behind closed doors, they scrutinized every decision I made, from my clothes to my career path. Unlike my sister Emily, who followed their prescribed life plan exactly, I always wanted something more. During my senior year at Boston University, I landed a coveted finance internship at Sterling Investments, one of the fastest-growing investment firms in the country. The pay was minimal, but the opportunity was priceless. I remembered sitting in the sleek conference room my first day, nervously arranging my portfolio as other interns chatted about their Ivy League connections. "First time in the financial district?" a deep voice asked. I looked up to see a tall man with piercing blue eyes and a perfectly tailored suit. His watch alone probably cost more than my entire education. "Is it that obvious?" I laughed, smoothing my discount store blazer. "Not at all. Just recognize the look of someone who's here to work, not network," he replied, sitting beside me instead of at the head of the table where everyone expected him. That was my first meeting with Alexander Sterling, 32-year-old financial prodigy and CEO. While the other interns scrambled for attention during the orientation, Alexander quietly asked for my opinion on market trends. By the end of the day, I'd been reassigned as his personal research assistant. Our professional relationship blossomed over the next 3 months. Late nights analyzing portfolio performances turned into takeout dinners in his office. He valued my perspective, never talking down to me despite my lack of experience. I was drawn not just to his obvious good looks, but to his brilliant mind and unexpected kindness. "Why finance?" he asked one evening as we reviewed quarterly projections. "I grew up watching my parents struggle with money despite making decent incomes," I explained. "They never understood investment or growth. I want to help ordinary people build wealth, not just manage debt." Alexander nodded thoughtfully. "Most people in this building want to make money. You want to make a difference." The first time he touched me was entirely accidental. We both reached for the same financial report, our hands brushing. The electricity between us was undeniable. We both pulled back, but our eyes held for a moment too long. After that night, something shifted. He began finding reasons for us to work alone. Private lunches to discuss market strategies. Weekend texts about interesting articles. My heart raced whenever his name appeared on my phone. Our first real date happened after I presented my analysis to the board. Alexander invited me to celebrate at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the harbor. Away from the office, he was different, more relaxed, funnier. He told me about growing up with wealthy but distant parents, about building his company from his dorm room. "Everyone sees the success," he confided. But nobody saw the nights I slept under my desk because I couldn't afford both office space and an apartment. I shared my dreams to the financial literacy program I wanted to create for underserved communities, my hopes of eventually earning my MBA. By dessert, his hand had found mine across the table. By the time we stood outside waiting for our separate cars, the tension between us was unbearable. "I shouldn't do this," he whispered, his face inches from mine. "You work for me." "I know," I replied, even as I moved closer. When his lips finally met mine, it felt inevitable, like gravity. We kept our relationship strictly private. Alexander worried people would think I was using him for advancement, or worse, that he was taking advantage of an intern. We created our own little world, stolen weekends at his beach house in Maine. Quiet dinners at hidden restaurants, midnight calls when we couldn't be together. He gave me thoughtful gifts, not expensive jewelry or designer clothes, but rare books on financial theory. A vintage calculator like one his mentor had used, a handmade journal for my business ideas. For his birthday, I spent weeks creating a detailed analysis of environmental investment opportunities, areas he had mentioned wanting to explore. He said it was the most thoughtful gift he'd ever received. Our plan was simple. Once my internship ended and I graduated, we would go public with our relationship. No conflicts of interest, no power imbalances. Just two people who happened to meet at work. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? He asked one evening as we lay on the couch in his penthouse, the Boston skyline glittering beyond the windows. Running my own investment consultancy for middle-class families, I said without hesitation. Maybe starting a family of my own. He traced patterns on my arm. With anyone in particular? Depends if he asks nicely, I teased. Alexander pulled me closer. And if he's planning to? My heart skipped. Then I'd say he should wait until after graduation. I want to be seen as my own person first. He nodded, understanding completely. That was always Alexander's greatest strength. He listened. He respected my ambitions. He never tried to overshadow my dreams with his success. Those months were the happiest of my life. I excelled at work, maintained a 4.0 GPA, and fell deeper in love with a man who treated me as an equal despite the obvious disparities in our situations. We talked about everything from market predictions to childhood memories, building a foundation stronger than mere attraction. If only I'd known how quickly everything would come crashing down. The pregnancy test wasn't supposed to be positive. Alexander and I had always been careful. But there it was, a small pink line changing the trajectory of my entire life. I sat on the bathroom floor of my tiny apartment, staring at the plastic stick as if it might change its mind. Alexander had left for a 3-week business trip to Asia the day before, finalizing a major international merger. We'd had a perfect send-off dinner at his penthouse, talking about plans for after my graduation in 2 months. He'd seemed distracted, mentioning some complications with the deal, but assured me everything was fine. I'll call whenever I can, he promised, kissing me goodbye. Time difference will be tricky, but we'll make it work. Now, just 24 hours later, I desperately needed to hear his voice. I tried his cell first, then his international number. Both went to voicemail. I sent a text asking him to call urgent, not mentioning the pregnancy, just that I needed to talk. I didn't want to drop that kind of news in a message. Days passed. No response. I tried not to panic. There had been times before when he was unreachable during intense negotiations. But he'd always warned me in advance, and this silence felt different. Wrong. By the end of the week, my worry had morphed into a sick feeling in my stomach unrelated to the pregnancy. I called his assistant Linda at the office. "I'm sorry, Abigail," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Mr. Sterling has requested no disruptions during this trip. I can pass along a message when he checks in." "When did you last hear from him?" I asked. A pause. "I'm not at liberty to discuss Mr. Sterling's schedule." That wasn't how Linda usually spoke to me. We'd become friendly over the months, occasionally grabbing coffee together. Her formality sent warning bells ringing. I turned to my best friend Jessica, the only person who knew about Alexander and me. "Something's wrong," I told her, pacing my apartment. "He wouldn't just disappear like this, especially not for a week." "Maybe the deal is more complicated than he expected," Jessica suggested, but I could hear the doubt in her voice too. "What are you going to do about?" She gestured to my still flat stomach. "I don't know," I admitted. "I need to talk to him first." 2 weeks into Alexander's trip, with still no word. I finally gathered my courage and went to the Sterling Investments office. The receptionist's smile faltered when she saw me. "Is Linda available?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "She's in a meeting," came the too quick reply. "Can I take a message?" As I turned to leave, I overheard two analysts whispering by the water cooler. "Sterling's really keeping it quiet." But Ryan in legal confirmed it. "He's negotiating more than just business in Singapore." The shipping heiress? I thought that was just a rumor. Apparently not. Makes sense though, a merger of companies and families. My blood ran cold. I somehow made it to the elevator before the tears started. Back at my apartment, I fell down the rabbit hole of internet searches. There it was, buried in the society pages. Alexander at a gala in Singapore, a striking woman in red by his side. Amara Tanaka, daughter of shipping magnate James Tanaka, whose company Sterling Investments had been courting for months. The caption read, "Business or pleasure?" Sources say Sterling and Tanaka have been inseparable during his extended Asian visit. I tried Alexander's numbers again, sent emails, even direct messages on social media platforms he rarely used. Nothing but silence. The man who had shared my bed, who had whispered future plans against my skin, had vanished completely. 3 days later, I received a formal email from Sterling Investments' HR department. Due to departmental restructuring, my internship was being terminated immediately. A severance package would be deposited into my account, and a reference letter was attached. The signature belonged to someone I'd never met. Jessica found me curled on my bathroom floor. "He knew," I sobbed. "He must have known about the baby somehow and ran. He set all this up before he left." "That doesn't sound like the man you described," Jessica said gently. "Then where is he? Why would he cut me off completely unless he wanted to erase me from his life?" Jessica had no answer for that. As weeks passed, my pregnancy advanced. Morning sickness hit hard, making it difficult to attend classes. My graduation was approaching, but instead of excitement, I felt only dread. My carefully planned future was disintegrating, and the silence from Alexander continued. I tried one last desperate attempt, going to his penthouse. The concierge stopped me in the lobby. "I'm sorry, miss. Mr. Sterling's residence is not accepting visitors." "When did he return from Asia?" I asked. The man's expression gave nothing away. "I'm not at liberty to discuss residence schedules." I left my student ID and a sealed note with my phone number. It was never acknowledged. With nowhere else to turn and my savings dwindling, I made the hardest decision of my life. I would go home to my parents, tell them everything, and ask for their help until I could figure out my next steps. I hadn't planned to involve them until Alexander and I could present a united front, but circumstances had forced my hand. I packed my few belongings, withdrew from my final semester with incomplete grades, and bought a bus ticket back to Connecticut. As the city skyline receded behind me, I placed a protective hand over my still flat stomach. "It's just you and me now, little one," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "We'll figure this out somehow." I had no idea that the worst betrayal was yet to come. The family home looked exactly as I remembered, the perfectly manicured lawn, the cheerful hanging baskets my mother refreshed each season, the polished brass knocker on the front door. I hesitated before using my key, suddenly feeling like a stranger rather than a daughter returning home. It was early evening when I stepped into the foyer, the familiar scent of my mother's potpourri hitting me immediately. I heard voices from the dining room, hushed, intense conversation. Setting down my suitcase, I moved toward the sound. "Hello," I called out. The conversation stopped abruptly. I rounded the corner to find my parents and sister Emily seated at the table, papers spread before them. Their expressions when they saw me weren't of surprise or welcome, but something darker, more complicated. "Abigail," my father said, his voice clipped. "We weren't expecting you." I needed to come home, I said, my rehearsed speech suddenly forgotten. Something's happened and I need to talk to you all. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, a tissue clutched in her hand. I think we know exactly what's happened. She slid a tabloid magazine across the table. There on the glossy page was a grainy photo of me entering Alexander's building, his arm around my waist. The headline screamed, "Sterling's secret intern affair exposed." The accompanying article was a masterpiece of innuendo, painting me as an opportunistic gold digger who'd slept my way into a prestigious position. It quoted anonymous sources claiming I'd been fired for attempting to blackmail Alexander after he ended our affair to pursue a legitimate relationship with Amara Tanaka. Is it true? My father demanded, his face flushed with anger. Parts of it, I admitted, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. Alexander and I were involved, but it wasn't like the article says. We were serious about each other. And yes, I'm pregnant, but he doesn't know yet. He's been unreachable, and I'm worried something's wrong. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother started crying again. My father's knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of the table. How could you be so stupid? Emily finally said. My older sister, always perfect, always the example I was meant to follow, looked at me with undisguised contempt. Do you have any idea what this has done to our family? Dad's clients are canceling contracts. Mom had to take a leave of absence from her agency. Everyone knows Abigail. I stared at her in confusion. Knows what? It was a private relationship that some gossip columnist twisted into something ugly. Don't play innocent, my father growled. You deliberately targeted a wealthy man. Tried to trap him with a pregnancy, and when that failed, you crawled back home expecting us to clean up your mess. That's not what happened. I protested. Alexander and I were in love. Something's wrong, he wouldn't just disappear like this. My mother looked up, her expression hardening despite her tears. The Sterling family issued a statement, Abigail. They said you were a disturbed young woman who became obsessed with their son, that you fabricated a relationship and threatened to create a scandal if he didn't pay you off. The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. That's a lie, I whispered. Why would they say that? Because it's true, Emily snapped. We've all seen the type of man Alexander Sterling is: rich, powerful, using girls like you for fun before moving on to appropriate matches like Amara Tanaka. Did you really think you were special? That he actually cared about some nobody from Connecticut? Her words struck with precision, targeting every insecurity I'd ever had about my relationship with Alexander. But I knew what we had shared. I knew the truth. You don't understand, I insisted. This isn't who he is. Something must have happened to him. And regardless, I'm pregnant with his child. Your grandchild, I added, looking at my parents. I need your help while I figure things out. My father stood so abruptly his chair fell backward. No daughter of mine would behave like a common whore. If you're pregnant, there are ways to handle that. End it. Cut all ties with the Sterling mess, and maybe we can salvage your reputation and this family's standing. I stepped back, horrified. You want me to abort your grandchild? Based on lies printed in a tabloid. Based on the truth that you tried to sleep your way to success, and it backfired spectacularly, Emily interjected. God, Abigail. I always knew you were jealous of me, but to go to these lengths? To bring this kind of shame on our family? Jealous of you? I repeated incredulously. When have I ever been jealous of you? Emily laughed coldly. Please. You've always resented that I was the successful one, the one who made the right choices. So you had to go big, didn't you? Had to bag a billionaire to one-up me. A horrible realization dawned. Emily, did you know about Alexander and me before this article? Her slight hesitation told me everything. You did, I breathed. How? Jessica told my friend Kara. Who told me, she admitted. I was trying to protect you, to warn you that you were making a mistake before it went too far. I may have mentioned it to a few people to get advice on how to handle it. You leaked my private life to gossip columnists to protect me? I was shaking now, rage and betrayal coursing through me. I didn't know it would blow up like this, she defended. But honestly, Abigail, what did you expect? Men like Alexander Sterling don't marry girls like you. You were never going to be anything but a scandal to him. My mother rose unsteadily. That's enough, both of you. Abigail, your father and I have discussed this. We're prepared to help you, but only if you agree to terminate this pregnancy and put this unsavory chapter behind you. We can arrange for you to finish your degree at the state college, find you a respectable internship with one of your father's business associates. I looked at these people, my family, and suddenly saw strangers. They didn't believe me. They hadn't even asked for my side of the story before deciding I was guilty of the worst accusations. No, I said quietly. No? My father repeated dangerously. I'm not getting rid of my baby. I'm not giving up on Alexander without knowing what really happened. And I'm not accepting your conditional help. Then you leave us no choice, he said coldly. If you insist on continuing this destructive path, you won't do it under our roof or with our support. Dad, I pleaded. Mom, please listen to me. You have until morning to pack whatever you can carry, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. Your mother will arrange for a hotel room for 3 nights. After that, you're on your own until you come to your senses. You're choosing gossip over your own daughter? I asked, tears streaming now. You're throwing me out while I'm pregnant and alone? You chose this, Abigail, my mother said, her voice empty of the warmth I'd known all my life. Not us. That night, as rain lashed against my childhood bedroom window, I packed what little I could into my already full suitcase. Photos, keepsakes, the emergency cash I'd hidden years ago in a hollowed-out book. Through the wall, I could hear Emily on the phone, undoubtedly sharing the latest development in the family scandal. In the morning, no one spoke as I dragged my suitcase downstairs. My mother handed me an envelope without meeting my eyes' hotel reservation, some cash. My father remained in his study, door firmly closed. Emily watched from the stairs, her expression unreadable. This isn't who you are, I told them all, my hand on the door. The people who raised me would never do this. No one responded. As I stepped outside into the drizzling rain, the door closed firmly behind me, the lock clicking with devastating finality. Jessica's apartment became my sanctuary after those 3 lonely hotel nights. Her 1-bedroom walk-up barely had space for a sofa bed, but she insisted I stay as long as needed. We'll figure this out, she promised, helping me unpack my meager belongings. First priority is getting you to a doctor. The free clinic confirmed what I already knew: 6 weeks pregnant, healthy so far. They provided prenatal vitamins and pamphlets on assistance programs. I applied for every government benefit available to single, pregnant women with no income. The process was humiliating but necessary. Jessica helped me find a job at West Side Coffee, a small cafe near her apartment. The manager, Terry, didn't ask questions about why a finance almost graduate needed a barista position. Just showed me how to operate the espresso machine and told me I could work as many shifts as I wanted. Tips are better if you don't show, he advised, gesturing vaguely toward my midsection. People get weird about pregnant servers. But I'll keep you on as long as you can work. I took every available shift, saving every dollar. At night, I searched online for any news of Alexander. The business press reported he was taking a temporary leave from day-to-day operations at Sterling Investments, with his CFO Morris Blackwell stepping in. The society pages showed Amara Tanaka attending events alone, deflecting questions about their rumored engagement. None of it made sense. The Alexander I knew wouldn't abandon his company, wouldn't propose to someone he'd just met, wouldn't discard me without a word. But my calls and emails continued to go unanswered, and gradually, a terrible thought took root: maybe I hadn't known him at all. As my first trimester progressed, exhaustion became my constant companion. Morning sickness struck at all hours. I lost weight instead of gaining it, worrying my doctor. Between work shifts, I slept like the dead, sometimes missing classes at the community college where I'd enrolled to complete my degree. Jessica tried to get me to reach out to my family again. At least let them know you're okay, she urged. They made their choice, I replied, too tired for anger anymore. They believed the worst of me without question. They threw me out when I needed them most. The truth was, I'd tried once, calling my mother when severe cramps sent me to the emergency room. She'd answered, listened to my tearful explanation, then said, "This is exactly what we warned you about, Abigail. When you're ready to make sensible decisions, call back." The line went dead before I could respond. The doctor said the cramps were stress-related, not a miscarriage risk, but ordered more rest. Terry reluctantly cut back my hours, leaving me even more financially vulnerable. It was during a particularly slow afternoon shift, my ankles swollen from standing, that I saw her, Linda, Alexander's executive assistant, walking into the cafe. She looked as polished as ever in her designer suit, a stark contrast to my stained apron and messy ponytail. Our eyes met across the counter. Her professional mask slipped, showing genuine shock. "Abigail," she approached cautiously. "Is that really you? Caramel macchiato, extra shot, light on the syrup?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Your usual, right? What are you doing here?" "Working in a coffee shop." She looked around as if Alexander might pop out from behind the pastry case. "Making a living," I replied simply. "What can I get you?" Linda ignored the question. "You look different." My hand instinctively covered my small but visible baby bump. "For months pregnant will do that." Her eyes widened. "For months? So that means..." "Alexander's," I confirmed. "Not that he knows or cares." Linda glanced around before lowering her voice. "You don't know, do you? About what happened to him?" My heart stuttered. "What do you mean, what happened to him? Can we sit down? Please?" I signaled to my coworker to cover the register and led Linda to a corner table, my legs suddenly unsteady. "Alexander was in a car accident in Singapore," she said without preamble. "The night after he arrived. He suffered a traumatic brain injury and was in a coma for nearly 3 weeks." The world tilted dangerously. A coma? But the news, the business. Amara Tanaka, all managed by his parents, Linda explained, her expression grim. "They swooped in, took control of everything, including the narrative. They never approved of you, you know. Too common for their precious air. When the accident happened, they saw an opportunity to erase you completely. But why say those horrible things about me? Why not just nothing? Because Alexander had told them about you, about his intentions. They knew he was serious. The accident gave them a chance to poison the well so thoroughly that even if he recovered, you'd want nothing to do with him." I gripped the edge of the table. "And Amara?" "A business arrangement, nothing more." The Tanakas were promised a merger, and parading Amara around served multiple purposes, creating a diversion, securing the business deal, and further discrediting your relationship. "When did he wake up?" I whispered. "About a month ago. His recovery has been slow. He still has some memory issues, speech problems. He's been asking for you, but his parents told him you'd taken their settlement and signed an NDA." Rage like I'd never known flooded through me. "They told him I took hush money? Well, I've been working 60-hour weeks just to afford prenatal vitamins." "He didn't believe it," Linda assured me. "That's why I'm here. He sent me to find you, against his parents' wishes. He's back in Boston, at Mass General's Rehabilitation Center." "Why didn't you come sooner?" I demanded. "I only discovered the truth myself last week. The Sterlings kept most of the staff in the dark, myself included. It was only when Alexander regained enough strength to access his private email and found all your unanswered messages that he realized something was wrong." I stood abruptly, untying my apron. "I need to see him." "Abigail, wait," Linda cautioned. "He's still fragile, and his parents have hired security to control his visitors." "Do you think I care about that?" I asked. "He's the father of my child. He deserves to know the truth, and so do I. Terry wasn't happy about my unscheduled departure, but the determination in my eyes must have warned him not to argue. Linda drove me to Massachusetts General in her sleek BMW, filling in more details about the accident and Alexander's condition. He still has trouble with some words, she warned as we approached the private wing. And he tires easily. But the doctors say his prognosis is excellent for a full recovery. We were stopped at the security desk. Exactly as Linda had predicted. Miss Stone isn't on the approved visitor list. The guard informed us after checking my ID. Call Mr. Sterling directly, Linda instructed. Tell him Abigail is here. The guard looked skeptical but made the call. His expression changed as he listened to the voice on the other end. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. He waved us through, looking slightly confused by the override of his instructions. Alexander's room was at the end of a quiet corridor. Linda stopped at the door. I'll wait out here, she said. Give you two some privacy. I hesitated, suddenly terrified. What if too much had changed? What if his feelings had altered along with his health? What if the accident had erased his memories of us? Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door. The man in the hospital bed was thinner than I remembered, his normally tanned skin pale against the white sheets. A healing scar curved along his hairline. But his eyes, when they found mine, were exactly the same clear, intense blue that had captivated me from our first meeting. Abigail, he said. And though the word came out slightly slurred, the emotion behind it was unmistakable. He struggled to sit up, wincing with the effort. Don't. I rushed to his side. Stay still. His hand found mine, gripping with surprising strength. You're here. Really here. I'm here, I confirmed, tears spilling over. Alexander, I thought you'd abandoned me. The articles. Your parents' statement. Lies, he said firmly. All lies. I would never, could never. I know that now, I assured him, perching carefully on the edge of his bed. Linda explained about the accident, about your parents. They kept you from me, he said, anger flashing in his eyes. Told everyone. Told me. It doesn't matter anymore, I soothed. Though it did in fact matter enormously. We know the truth now. His gaze traveled down to my midsection, visible now as I sat beside him. His eyes widened. You're pregnant. I nodded, suddenly nervous. For months. It's why I was trying so desperately to reach you before. Alexander's hand moved tentatively toward my bump, stopping just short of touching me. Mine? He asked, though it wasn't really a question. Yours, I confirmed. And actually, there's more. I reached into my purse for the ultrasound image I always carried, passing it to him with shaking hands. The technician had circled and labeled the two distinct forms visible in the grainy picture. Alexander stared at it, his medical condition momentarily rendering him more inarticulate than the news itself. 2, he finally managed. Twins? A boy and a girl, I said, smiling through my tears. Due in 5 months. He pulled me toward him then, his embrace awkward but fierce. I'm so sorry, he murmured against my hair. So sorry you went through this alone. It wasn't your fault, I assured him. My parents, he said, pulling back to look at me. What they did, unforgivable. We'll deal with them later, I promised. Right now, you need to focus on getting better. He shook his head stubbornly. You need protection, support, my house, security. Move in. Today. His determination made me laugh despite everything. Alexander, I can't just move into your penthouse. I have responsibilities. A job. Serving coffee while carrying my children, he asked, his voice stronger now. No. Not acceptable. It's all I have, I explained. My parents. They threw me out when they learned about the pregnancy. They believed the stories about us. His expression darkened dangerously. Your family too? Everyone betrayed you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Then we make our own family, he declared. You, me, our children. No one else matters. Despite everything, his injured state, the months of separation, the conspiracies against us, I believed him completely. In that moment, with his hand protectively covering mine on my growing belly, I knew we would somehow find our way forward together. Alexander refused to spend another night in the hospital once he knew about the pregnancy. Against medical advice, he discharged himself the very next day, insisting we go directly to his home. The doctors said another week. I protested as his driver loaded my few belongings into the trunk of a sleek black car. I can recover at home, Alexander replied. His speech already noticeably improved from the previous day. With private nurses and you. His penthouse felt simultaneously familiar and strange as we stepped inside. The last time I'd been here, we'd had no idea how our lives would be upended. Now I returned as the mother of his unborn children, both of us irrevocably changed. Alexander's recovery progressed rapidly once we settled into a routine. His determination was awe-inspiring. Speech therapy in the mornings, physical therapy in the afternoons, cognitive exercises in between. Within weeks, only a slight hesitation in complex sentences revealed his lingering impairment. Meanwhile, my pregnancy advanced. With proper nutrition and prenatal care now easily accessible, the twins grew vigorously. My body expanded daily, making me increasingly grateful for the specially ordered maternity clothes that appeared mysteriously in the guest closet. Alexander, these must have cost thousands. I protested after discovering an entire wardrobe of designer maternity wear. He simply shrugged. You're carrying precious cargo. Only the best. His parents attempted to intervene, of course. Martin and Eleanor Sterling arrived unannounced one afternoon, their matching expressions of disdain melting into shock when they saw my prominent bump. This is a new low, Eleanor hissed. Faking a pregnancy to manipulate our son while he's vulnerable. Alexander stepped between us, his posture protective. Not fake. My children. Twins. DNA test if you want. But then you'll never see them. Your choice. Martin attempted a different approach. Son, you've suffered a traumatic brain injury. You're not thinking clearly. This girl has been taking advantage of that. Get out, Alexander replied calmly. You lied to me. Lied about Abigail. Tried to erase her. Nearly succeeded. We were protecting you and the company. Eleanor insisted. A scandal with an intern could have destroyed everything you've built. Love isn't scandal, Alexander said simply. Now leave, or security will remove you. They left. But the war had only begun. Over the following months, as my due date approached and Alexander's recovery continued, his parents launched multiple attacks. They attempted to trigger a competency hearing, claiming Alexander's brain injury rendered him incapable of making sound decisions. When that failed thanks to his doctor's testimonies, they tried to wrest control of the company through board manipulation. Alexander countered each move methodically, his brilliant mind undimmed despite his injury. He restructured the company leadership, securing his position. He updated his will and established trusts for our unborn children. He even filed restraining orders when his parents' harassment became too intrusive. Through it all, we created our sanctuary within the penthouse. I completed my degree online, graduating just weeks before my due date. Alexander returned to work part-time, rebuilding relationships with key clients who'd been fed misinformation during his absence. In the evenings, we prepared for our children's arrival, setting up the nursery, attending parenting classes, discussing names. The outside world with its judgments and machinations seemed increasingly distant compared to the family we were creating. I tried not to think about my own parents, but their absence ached like a phantom limb. Jessica kept me reluctantly updated on their situation. Your dad's company is struggling, she reported during one of her visits. Apparently, he made some risky investments that didn't pan out. Is that why Emily's wedding was downsized? I asked. Having seen photos on social media of my sister's hastily rearranged nuptials to Bradford, her investment banker fiancé, Jessica nodded. The country club venue was suddenly unavailable. They had it at your parents' church instead. I felt a twinge of satisfaction followed immediately by guilt. I didn't want my family to suffer exactly. But there was a certain cosmic justice in their current struggles. The twins arrived on a snowy December morning after 18 hours of labor. Alexander never left my side, his steady presence anchoring me through the pain and exhaustion. When they finally placed our daughter and son in our arms, the world outside ceased to exist entirely. "They're perfect," Alexander whispered, cradling our tiny son against his chest. "Thank you for fighting for them." For us. We named them Eliza and James, not family names, but new beginnings for our newly formed family. The first few months passed in a blur of midnight feedings, diaper changes, and overwhelming love. Alexander proved to be a natural father, handling his share of parenting duties with the same focus he brought to business deals. By the twins' 6-month birthday, Alexander had fully recovered from his injuries. The company was thriving under his renewed leadership, and he decided it was time to make our family official. The proposal happened in the rooftop garden he'd had installed as a surprise while I was in the hospital delivering the twins. Surrounded by blooming flowers and twinkling lights, with our babies sleeping peacefully in their stroller nearby, he knelt on one knee. "When I was in that coma," he said, "they say I spoke only one word repeatedly. Your name. Even in darkness. I was looking for you." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a stunning emerald ring. "Be my wife, Abigail. Make official what we already know is true, we belong together, always." Our wedding was small but elegant, with only trusted friends in attendance. Linda served as my maid of honor, while Alexander's college roommate Samuel stood as best man. The twins, now 8 months old and recently mastering sitting upright, watched the ceremony from the arms of their caregivers, occasionally punctuating the vows with delighted squeals. As we settled into married life, news from my hometown continued to worsen. My father's company declared bankruptcy after investigations revealed financial improprieties. Though no charges were filed, his reputation was destroyed. My mother lost her real estate license in a related scandal involving property valuations. Most devastating of all, she was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer, requiring expensive treatments their dwindling insurance barely covered. Emily's marriage crumbled under the financial strain when Bradford, ever status conscious, filed for divorce after just 11 months. She moved back home to help care for our mother, her own career prospects dimmed by association with our father's business failures. I learned all this not from my family directly, but through Jessica's continued updates and occasional local news articles Alexander's security team flagged in their regular monitoring. "They made their bed," Alexander said firmly when he caught me looking troubled after one such update. "You owe them nothing." "I know," I agreed. But it's hard not to think about how different things could have been if they'd just believed in me. In us. Alexander pulled me close. "Their loss is immeasurable. They'll never know our children. Never see the amazing mother you've become. Never be part of our happiness. That's punishment enough." I tried to embrace his perspective, focusing instead on our blessings. I'd started a small foundation providing support to young single mothers, channeling my own experience into meaningful help for others. Alexander had revolutionized his company's family leave policies, becoming an unexpected champion for working parents in the financial sector. Our twins thrived, growing into curious, joyful toddlers who filled our home with laughter. We'd created the family we'd both longed for, secure, loving, supportive, everything our own families had failed to be. Yet late at night, when everyone was asleep, I sometimes found myself looking at old family photos, wondering if there could ever be reconciliation. Not for my sake, I'd made peace with their betrayal, but for my children, who deserved to know their heritage, however flawed. I never imagined reconciliation would come in the form of three desperate figures standing at our front gate, luggage in hand. 1 year after our wedding and 2 years since they'd thrown me out of their home. The security alert chimed while I was supervising the twins' lunch, their tiny fingers enthusiastically smashing avocado into their mouths and everywhere else within reach. Mrs. Sterling, our head of security's voice came through the intercom. There are 3 individuals at the main gate claiming to be your family. Walter, Catherine, and Emily Matthews. They're requesting entry. My hand froze midway through wiping Eliza's messy face. My parents and sister are here? Yes, ma'am. They have luggage with them and appear distressed. Should I turn them away? I looked at my children, their curious eyes watching my reaction. Too young to understand the magnitude of this moment. Alexander was at the office. This decision was mine alone. Let them into the waiting area, I decided. I'll be down shortly. After hastily cleaning the twins and settling them with their nanny for their afternoon nap, I changed from my stained t-shirt into a simple but elegant dress. My hand hovered over my jewelry box before deliberately selecting the emerald engagement ring and wedding band Alexander had given me. If this confrontation was finally happening, I wanted visible reminders of everything I'd built without them. The security monitors showed them in the guest reception area space designed for delivery personnel and unscheduled visitors that provided comfort without access to the main house. What I saw made me pause. My once proud father looked decades older than his 58 years, his shoulders stooped, his designer clothes replaced by worn khakis and a faded polo shirt. My mother, thin from her cancer treatments, sat leaning heavily on a cane. Emily paced the small room, her formerly perfect appearance now marked by dark roots in her blonde hair and chipped nail polish. Steeling myself, I took the private elevator down to the reception area. When the doors opened, all 3 heads snapped up, their expressions a complex mixture of hope, shame, and desperation. Abigail, my mother breathed, attempting to rise before her strength failed her. Stay seated, please, I said, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. I remained by the elevator, maintaining distance. This is unexpected. You look well, my father said awkwardly. Very well. I am well, I confirmed. But I doubt you came all this way to check on my well-being after 2 years of silence. Emily stepped forward. We need help, Abby. Dad's bankrupt. Mom's medical bills are crushing us. And we've lost the house. We have nowhere else to go. The blunt admission hung in the air between us. No apology, no acknowledgement of their past actions, just a naked appeal for assistance. I see, I said quietly. And you thought coming here was appropriate because your family, my mother said, her voice cracking. Despite everything. Family, I repeated. Interesting how that word only matters when you need something from me. My father flushed. We made mistakes, Abigail. Terrible mistakes. We're not too proud to admit that. Actually, you seem exactly too proud, I observed. I don't hear an apology. I don't hear any recognition of how you abandoned me when I was pregnant and alone. I hear people who've exhausted all other options and are now treating me as their safety net. Emily's facade cracked. What do you want us to say? That we were wrong? Fine, we were wrong. Is that enough for you to help your own mother who's dying of cancer? Emily, my mother cautioned. No, Mom. Let's be honest for once, Emily continued, anger breaking through her desperation. Abigail got lucky. Her rich boyfriend came back, decided to play family man, and now she lives like a queen while we're about to be homeless. The least she can do is share some of that fortune. I studied my sister, seeing the same entitled attitude that had contributed to our family's downfall. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about luck. Alexander and I built this life together, through pain and betrayal and hard work. We created a family based on trust and support the exact opposite of what you 3 represent. We believed what everyone was saying, my father defended weakly. The news, the Sterling family statement. You believed strangers over your own daughter, I corrected. You threw me out onto the street while I was carrying your grandchildren. You didn't even ask for my side of the story. Grandchildren? My mother's head snapped up. You have more than one child? Before I could respond, the elevator doors opened behind me. Alexander stepped out, his expression carefully neutral as he assessed the situation. The twins' nanny followed, holding Eliza and James by their hands as they toddled forward. I thought you might want the children present for this discussion, Alexander said, coming to stand beside me. Since family seems to be the topic. The shock on my parents' and sisters' faces would have been comical under different circumstances. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, while my father seemed to physically shrink in the presence of Alexander and the visual evidence of his grandchildren. Twins, Emily whispered. Alexander crouched down to the children's level. Eliza, James, can you say hello to these people? They're your mother's family. Hello, the twins chorused with the perfect manners we'd been teaching them, completely unaware of the emotional undercurrents swirling through the room. My mother began to weep silently, reaching one trembling hand toward the children before pulling back. My father stared, his expression unreadable. Emily looked stunned, as if the reality of what they'd rejected was only now becoming clear. They're beautiful, my mother managed between tears. How old? 15 months, I answered. They were born in December. The simple math wasn't lost on any of them. The children had been conceived before they'd thrown me out, exactly as I'd told them. You were telling the truth, my father said slowly. About everything. Yes. And Alexander was in a coma after a car accident, Alexander supplied, standing and placing a protective arm around me, while my parents fabricated stories and paid people to silence the truth. Much like you chose to believe the worst about your daughter without question. My father flinched at the comparison. We've made terrible mistakes, my mother admitted. Real remorse finally breaking through. Unforgivable mistakes. Yet here you are, seeking forgiveness. Or at least shelter, I observed. Emily stepped forward again. But this time her posture was different, humbler, more genuine. We don't deserve your help, Abby. I know that better than anyone. I was cruel to you, jealous of you, and I helped spread those rumors. What happened to us? Maybe it's karma. But Mom really is sick, and we really don't have anywhere else to go. It was the first honest thing my sister had said to me in years. The twins were growing restless, squirming to be released from the nanny's gentle hold. I nodded, and she let them toddle around the reception area under her watchful eye. You hurt me in ways I can't fully express, I said, watching my children play, oblivious to the family drama unfolding around them. You chose appearances over love. You failed the most basic test of parenthood, standing by your child. We know, my father said quietly, and we'll carry that shame forever. What exactly are you asking for? Alexander inquired, his business acumen coming to the fore. Financial assistance? Housing? What? They exchanged uncomfortable glances. We need a place to stay temporarily, my father finally admitted. Some help with Catherine's medical expenses. A chance to make amends if that's even possible. I looked at these broken versions of the family who had once defined my world. My mother, frail from disease and regret. My father, humbled by failure. My sister, finally seeing beyond her own self-interest. They were shadows of the confident, judgmental people who had cast me out. Alexander squeezed my shoulder gently. This is your decision, he murmured. Whatever you choose, I'll support you. Eliza chose that moment to toddle over to my mother, curious about this new person. She placed her tiny hand on my mother's knee, looking up with Alexander's blue eyes in my heart-shaped face. Hi, she said again, offering the innocent acceptance only a child can give. My mother's tears flowed freely now, but she made no move to touch my daughter, respecting boundaries she hadn't earned the right to cross. In that moment, watching my child extend a hand my mother didn't feel worthy to take, I made my decision. You can't stay here, I said firmly, watching their faces fall. But I won't leave you homeless either. Alexander, understanding my intention without words, stepped forward. I own several properties in the area. There's a small 3-bedroom house in Brookline currently vacant. It's modest but comfortable and near the medical center where Mrs. Matthews can receive treatment. My father looked stunned. You'd do that for us? After everything? Not for you, Alexander clarified. For Abigail and our children. Your redemption isn't my concern, but their well-being is. Having their mother constantly worried about your homelessness doesn't serve them. As for medical expenses, I added, I'll arrange for Mom to be seen by specialists at Massachusetts General. They have an excellent oncology department. We can't afford that, my mother protested weakly. You won't be paying, I explained. The Sterling Foundation will cover the costs as part of its healthcare initiative. Emily looked suspicious. And what do you want in return? That's where the conditions come in, I said. You'll have housing and medical care, but no direct financial support. Dad, you'll need to find work whatever you can get. Emily, the same goes for you. Who would hire me at my age? With my reputation? My father asked. That's for you to figure out, Alexander replied without sympathy. Plenty of men your age work retail, security, customer service. It won't be the executive position you're accustomed to, but it will be honest work. And most importantly, I continued, there will be boundaries. Clear, non-negotiable boundaries. What kind of boundaries? My mother asked. You will not have unlimited access to me or my children. Visits will be scheduled and supervised, at least initially. You will respect our parenting decisions without question. You will never again presume to judge my choices or my relationship. They nodded, too desperate to argue. And you will attend family therapy, I finished. All of you, consistently. Not because I expect miraculous healing, but because I won't subject my children to toxic family dynamics. We'll do whatever you ask, my father agreed quickly. That's part of the problem, I pointed out. You're agreeing because you're desperate, not because you understand why these conditions matter. That's why the therapy is non-negotiable. James had wandered over to join his sister, both now staring curiously at these strangers. Emily knelt down to their level, careful to maintain distance. They really do look like both of you, she observed. James has your chin, Abby. And Eliza has Alexander's eyes, my mother added softly. They have their own unique spirits too, I said. James is analytical and cautious. Eliza is bold and creative. They're people, not just combinations of our features. My mother nodded, understanding the gentle correction. Over the following months, our carefully structured reconciliation inched forward. My parents moved into the Brookline house, humble by their former standards, but safe and comfortable. My mother began aggressive treatment for her cancer, showing promising response. My father, after weeks of rejection, secured a position as a night manager at a home improvement store surprisingly well suited to his knowledge of construction materials. Emily struggled the most with our new reality. Her pride made it difficult to accept entry-level positions, and her bitterness occasionally flared during family therapy sessions. But gradually, as she began teaching piano lessons to neighborhood children, she found unexpected fulfillment in work that utilized her talents without feeding her ego. The first supervised visit with the twins was awkward and emotional. My parents sat stiffly on our terrace, uncertain how to interact with toddlers they didn't know. Alexander and I demonstrated simple games and activities, creating a bridge between these strangers who shared blood. They're so intelligent. My father marveled after James methodically sorted blocks by color. And well-behaved. They're also capable of spectacular tantrums, I laughed. You're seeing their best behavior today. These small moments of normalcy began to accumulate. My mother brought homemade applesauce the twins actually enjoyed. My father read them the same bedtime story he'd once read to me. Emily taught Eliza simple melodies on the piano. The healing wasn't linear or complete. There were setbacks, difficult therapy sessions where old wounds reopened, tense holidays navigating new traditions, moments when the pain of their betrayal would resurface unexpectedly. I maintained firm boundaries, canceling visits when my parents slipped into old patterns or when Emily made passive-aggressive comments. Alexander remained my steadfast partner through it all, neither pushing reconciliation nor discouraging it. "They're earning their way back," he observed on our second anniversary. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. "Do you think I made the right choice?" I asked him, letting them back in at all. "I think you made the compassionate choice," he replied, "which isn't always the same as the easy choice. You're modeling forgiveness for our children, but with appropriate boundaries." That's remarkable. The true test came when my mother's cancer went into remission after 18 months of treatment. With her health improving and my father's job stable, they no longer needed our financial support. I wondered if their commitment to rebuilding our relationship would waver once necessity no longer compelled it. To my surprise, they became more dedicated to the healing process, not less. My father began volunteering with a mentoring program for young entrepreneurs, finding purpose in guiding others away from the mistakes he'd made. My mother, once recovered enough, assisted with my foundation's work supporting young mothers. Emily, after a year of therapy, finally delivered the apology I'd been waiting for, not in a session, but privately over coffee. "I was jealous of you my entire life," she admitted. "You were smarter, more independent. You questioned things I just accepted. When you found love with Alexander, a part of me couldn't bear that you'd found such happiness on your own terms. We could have been allies instead of rivals," I told her. "That's what hurts the most. Can we try now?" She asked hesitantly. "To be sisters who support each other." It was a beginning. The twins' third birthday celebration marked a milestone in our family's reconstruction. For the first time, I invited my parents and Emily to our home without supervision, trusting them to respect our boundaries. The party wasn't perfect. My mother still occasionally slipped into giving unsolicited advice. My father sometimes spoke too formally to Alexander, and Emily had moments of awkwardness with our friends. But watching James excitedly show my father his toy dinosaur collection, and seeing Eliza confidently perform a dance routine for my mother, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't expected to find. The family tableau wasn't what I'd envisioned growing up, but it had integrity. We'd built these relationships consciously, with eyes open to both human frailty and capacity for growth. That night, after the guests had departed and the twins were asleep, Alexander found me on our bedroom balcony, looking at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "I was thinking about forgiveness," I replied. "Not the Hallmark version, but the real kind. The kind that acknowledges harm done, that maintains boundaries, that expects accountability. The kind you've demonstrated," he noted. "I haven't forgotten what they did," I admitted. "I never will. But carrying that anger was poisoning me from within. I had to find a way to move forward that honored my pain while allowing for possibility." "You've found balance," Alexander said, "between memory and hope." I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had stood beside me through everything. We all deserve second chances, but not without earning them. That's what I want our children to understand as they grow up, not blind trust, but discerning compassion. "They have the best teacher I know," he said, kissing me softly. Later that week, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. The final paragraph stayed with me. "I will never forgive myself for failing you when you needed me most. That's my burden to carry. But your decision to give us a pathway back into your life, with all its careful boundaries and expectations, has taught me more about true strength than anything else. You've become the mother I should have been, steadfast, protective, wise in your compassion. Your children are blessed to have you, as I was but failed to recognize. I don't forget. But I've learned to live without bitterness, which only poisons the one who carries it. True happiness comes from knowing when to let go, when to forgive, and most importantly, When to love yourself enough to set boundaries. Looking back on that rainy night when I stood abandoned on my parents' doorstep, I could never have imagined the journey ahead the twins. Alexander's love, the family we've created, and yes, even the complicated reconciliation with those who hurt me. Life rarely offers perfect closure or complete healing, but it does provide opportunities for growth, for connection, for finding our way forward on our own terms. If you've stayed with me through this story, I'd love to know. Have you ever had to forgive someone who deeply hurt you? What boundaries did you need to establish? Share your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, your story matters too, and someone out there needs to hear that healing is possible, even after the deepest betrayals. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to write your own path forward, whatever challenges you face.